Hey everyone, it's Mom's Wife of One, and it is Thursday, April 22nd, 2021, which means the day after the latest episode of Married at First Sight, which means that this is the recap and review of Season 12, Episode 15 of Married at First Sight. Can you guys believe that you've been hanging with me and hanging out with these couples for almost 4 months now? That's how long we've been doing this, and I think there's maybe one or two more episodes left and then we'll be done with this season. And I am so ready. And as soon as the show started, all I kept thinking to myself was, I'm watching this because I have to do a recap. If I didn't have to do a recap, I may actually skip it because I'm tired of these couples. But let's get right to it. This was yet another episode where we did not have Paige and Chris, so I'm thankful for that. But let's get into the other couples. So at this point, they are about 9 days away from decision day. So the experts thought it'd be a good idea if they go on a little retreat to get away from everyday life and go back to relaxing and going back to being around the other couples. And I thought it was kind of a weird thing because it's like, oh, let's get away from the real world. It's like you've only experienced the real world for 2 months. So what is there to get away from? And then like, oh, let's give the other couples. Y'all live in the same apartment complex. I could get them whenever y'all want. But again, whatever. I don't run the show, so what do I know? So they're in Atlanta is where they're based, but they all drove 5 hours to Hilton Head, South Carolina, where they all stayed in a house together. And they played like a couples game, and then the couples went off and did their own thing, and they ate food together and all that stuff. So the whole point was, let's get away, let's really assess where we are in our relationship, let's talk to the other wives and the husbands to see where they are, so that we can make an educated decision on decision day. So first, I'm going to start with Clara and Ryan, which I never start with them. So Claire and Ryan, first of all, their activity together was paddleboarding, which was cool. And I think my favorite part about this episode with them is that I feel like Clara got some of what she's been lacking from Ryan. She said before that he is not very good at being vulnerable. He's not very good at opening up. And I don't know if that's in general or if that's specifically on camera. And some people are like that when the cameras are around. So I wasn't quite clear what she meant by that. But he's the one, as a recap, they're the only couple that have not had sex. And when I mean sex, I mean actual penetration sex. But they have done everything else orally. So there you go. But he's also the one that has been in a relationship before for up to 2 or 3 years and has never said I love you. He's never said I love you to a significant other that was not like a parent or a family member. And she has already all but said I am in love with Ryan, but she refuses to say it to him first because she is afraid she's not going to hear back, which I think is valid. And but she always says like, oh, the relationship is great and he's so wonderful. And not saying he's a bad guy, but because these are two things that she really, really needs and she's not getting those two things as a viewer, it seems like your relationship maybe isn't that great. But I think in them taking their time and things moving a little bit slower, it has forced her to look at all aspects of Ryan, not just the things that she's not getting from him. But obviously, she still wants to hear those words, or she wants to show some kind of acknowledgement at all about his feelings. Even if he's not saying I love you, she wants to hear something related to what he feels for her. And so their activity that Dr. Pepper had for them was to write a love letter to each other. And he went first, and his love letter was extremely sweet. I don't know if it was necessarily vulnerable. I guess it was vulnerable. In his love letter, he basically he thanked her for all the things that she does for him and all of the things that she fulfills in their marriage. And just the way he phrased everything was really sweet. And you could tell that's exactly what she's been waiting for all these weeks to hear. That she was extra emotional and crying. And it was like, oh my gosh, he sees me. Like, he really sees who I am. He sees the effort I'm putting in. I could tell that she felt seen in that moment. And it was really pretty. And one of the things he said in his letter was, thank you for letting me be me and for loving me for it. So he even says, like, in his letter, like, he knows that what she's doing is showing love for him. And I think, and my mom disagreed with me, but I think one of the reasons she got so emotional is because he was vulnerable and open and honest about how he feels about her and what she's doing for the marriage. But I think also that without actually saying the word love, he said everything to allude to the fact that he does love her. And him not saying it isn't necessarily because he doesn't have those feelings, because he's never said it before. And it's awkward for him and a little uncomfortable for him. And he's probably still a little nervous about how it's going to come across and all that stuff. But the letter, I think, just solidified for her, like, okay, he sees me. he knows that I love him even though I haven't said it, and him writing these words proves that he's on the same track as I am. And so she was really emotional, and I definitely got it. I understood what he was getting at. In her letter, she said something like, I want to thank you for making all the past heartbreak worth it. And I was like, oh, that hit my heart a little bit. And she basically, in her letter, talked about how she went through basically any other time she's written a letter to a man, it's been because she's been heartbroken. And, or she's, basically, I've been heartbroken, and let me, ask you why you did this to me. I can't believe you did this, blah, 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 blah. So this is the first time really writing a letter of just genuine love and appreciation to a person that she's with. And, she talks about kind of the toxic relationship she's had in the past, but how going through all of that was for a reason and for a purpose that has brought me to you and has brought me to this moment. And it was a really sweet, tender moment between the two of them. And I feel like this whole season we haven't really seen that. There have been times where she has been vulnerable and opened up about stuff, and then he just kind of, not that he ruins it, but it almost seems like he's uncomfortable with that side, because he'll kind of like say an offhanded joke, or he'll just smile and nod and not really contribute to the conversation. So this is the first time we've seen both of them really kind of let their walls down and really express how they feel to each other, which was really, again, I thought very, very sweet, and I appreciated that from them. And it definitely gives the opinion, or it gives the appearance that they're going on the right track and that they're going to be good. And I never really thought that they were doomed necessarily, but I thought that it boded well for them as a couple. Now, Haley and Jacob, they are so interesting. Why did y'all come on this trip? The trip, again, is meant for you guys to, figure out any lingering questions you may have so you can make an educated decision on, decision day. Y'all know what y'all going to say on decision day. Both of y'all already know this. The world knows that neither one of you are staying together. So I think they just went a trip just because it was a free trip, but it's like neither one of y'all came on this trip with the intention of trying to make things better, with the intention of trying to see if there's something there to salvage. Y'all didn't come there for that. First of all, they went to this trip in separate cars. That's already like, okay, they're not sleeping in the same bed in their own apartment. They took separate cars going to this place. And at the place, they slept in separate bedrooms. And then I guess there was a lack of communication. She said, like, oh, we should cook together as a couple for the other couples because we're going to get there first. And I guess he originally agreed, but then he got there first and was hungry, so he made his dinner of 8 fried eggs. It's like, that's a whole nother thing. I'm not even going to comment on the 8 fried eggs for dinner. That was just a lot. I was like, you know what? I'm going to let him have that. He's quirky and he's weird, and I guess he needs the protein or whatever. You stay over there with that. But she was obviously a little like disturbed, like, oh, I thought we said we were cooking dinner together. So she ended up cooking dinner by herself. And she still feels like, I'm giving, I'm trying to ask questions, I'm trying to do stuff together, and I just get shut down at every turn. It's like, well, I don't have to be your punching bag. Like, I don't have to keep asking. And then it got even weirder and more uncomfortable. And there are moments when I watch certain TV shows or movies where I can tell an awkward moment is about to happen. So I either turn away or I put it on mute because I feel embarrassed for the character. But that's on a whole nother level because those are characters playing the role of, they're playing, they're acting. It's a sitcom, it's a drama. These aren't real characters, necessarily real people. But this show is a reality show. So seeing the tension play out, because they basically had a very tenseful conversation where they were very catty and snipey towards one another in front of the other couples when they're all supposed to be sitting down for dinner the very first night. And the other couples, you could tell, were like, And the thing is, I feel like if I was sitting there and I feel stuff getting awkward and uncomfortable, I feel like my first instinct is going to be to get up, take my husband, be like, okay, you guys, well, we're going to turn in, and just kind of root myself in the situation. But they sat there in that tension and just listened to them gripe with each other. And I just felt like that was kind of weird. I felt it was weird for the people who sat and stayed in there because that wasn't a comfortable situation for anybody. I felt like I was there at that table and I wanted to turn my TV off. Like, oh my gosh, why are y'all here? Why y'all still married? And basically that's what some of the couples saying. They were like, I knew that things were off. I did not know it was that bad. It was like, why would you do that in front of everybody? Well, I'll say why would you do it in front of everybody? Not that. But why would you stay? If I'm Brianna and Vincent and Eric and Virginia, because Claire and Ryan hadn't gotten there yet, why would I just sit there and just listen to this? I'm not going to jump in because it's not my business. That's their marriage. They got to deal, work things out themselves. But I definitely would have removed myself from the room and just be like, all right, I was like, well, babe, I think I'm going to go up to the room to hang out. You want to come with me? All right, yo, we'll see you in the morning. And then I would have just gracefully, like, rolled out. And then as soon as I got to my room, me and my husband would have dissected everything. Like, yo, did you hear him? He said that. Yo, she said this though, but I don't know. And it's funny because while I'm watching the show, my husband came home and he does not watch the show, but occasionally out of curiosity, he'll ask me, "Oh, so what's up with the couple that did such and such?" So we talked for like 20 minutes while I updated him on the couples and updated him on this conversation that they're having, and we just had a ball dissecting it. So I know that Brianna and Vincent and Eric and Virginia, when they got in their bed that night, they talked about it. Like, oh my gosh, did you see how Haley looked? Did you see what Jacob said though? That's one of the podcasts I listen to. This that's one of the best parts about being married is being with your spouse and just talking up, just like catching up on gossip for the stuff that you've seen and heard throughout the day. And so I know that's what happened. But it was just so awkward and it was just weird. And then they played a couples game where I guess the experts came up with this game where you're basically reading off facts about a spouse and you have to buzz in if you think it's your spouse. And even though Haley and Jacob are the ones who get along the least, all they have, since they're not having sex either, all they have is conversation. And Haley was like, despite what he thinks, all the stories he's told me, I've listened very carefully to all of his stories. And they end up winning the game because they know the most about each other because they talk all the time, even though most of it is like heated or whatever. But they end up winning the game, and then, everybody goes to bed, Haley and Jacob to their separate bedrooms. And the next day, Haley and Jacob went crabbing, and it seemed like they were getting along. It seemed fine. When they were cooking the crabs, they were cooking it with everybody else. It seemed fun. Everybody's laughing, kikiing, ha ha. But then the next day, that Sunday, when it's time to go home, we see Jacob packing his stuff up. It is still dark outside. So we're talking probably 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. This man packs up his stuff, takes the stuff out of the refrigerator that he brought, puts it in a nice little pillowcase, and he leaves. And I'm looking and I'm like, I know he didn't leave without writing a note at least to his wife. No matter where things are, it's just common courtesy to at least send her a note. Like, even though you're not sleeping in the same bedroom, you know what bedroom that she's in. So you could have easily slipped a note under the door and said, Haley, I decided to leave early. I'll see you when you get home or something. But he didn't say anything to her, didn't say anything to anybody. And so she woke up the next morning, got dressed, whatever, and is going to his room looking for him. And she's like, he really just left and didn't say anything to anybody. And she's like, I thought we were having fun. Like, I'm just confused as to like what happened to make him just like leave. So I thought that was really weird. But and I feel like some people must say like, oh, he probably left because he's like, what's the point? But if you had that feeling of what's the point, then why go on a trip in the first place? You should have been like, nah, I'm not gonna go. And then Haley still would have gone probably and hung out with the girls and complained about him, and it would have been all good. But it's like, not the one of y'all should have been there. Y'all know that there's no hope for this marriage. There's no hope for even friendship at this point. It's like, you know, this was a nice experience. It was nice to meet you. And I'll have my lawyer call your lawyer. And that's it. That's really what's going to boil down to for them. And also, she gave him back the bracelet. Now, if you guys watched last week's recap that I did, or even just watched last week's episode, you know there was this whole thing about him spending $800 to buy her a bracelet that he gifted her on the actual wedding day. Now, he apparently kept bringing this bracelet up, but we didn't really see that as viewers. But they showed like clips of the show, I guess. And he has like brought up the bracelet mainly because he sent it to her on their wedding day before he ever met her, and she didn't wear it for whatever reason. And the reason he knows she didn't wear it, and I know she didn't even take it out of the box, she was like, oh, that necklace was so pretty. He's like, oh, it was a bracelet. She's like, oh, bracelet, okay. So you didn't even take this thing out of the box to look at it. I did think it was weird that she didn't wear it. It's not like she was wearing a long sleeve dress and, oh my gosh, you won't be able to see it under my sleeves. No, you had on a sleeveless dress, so you easily could have worn it. I think it was a matter of I already have my jewelry picked out. But still, he's making this effort. You're supposed to wear it. That's just kind of how it is. And his main thing wasn't that she didn't wear it. It was that after the wedding, her mom packed up her stuff, and I guess her parents or family, whatever, from Alabama, took it to Alabama. So the bracelet has been in Alabama this entire time. So he's like, my beef isn't that you didn't wear it. My beef is that it hasn't even been in this house. That's my beef. It's been 6, 7 weeks, and you have never once tried to bring it back here. And Dr. Pepper was telling her last week that basically when he did that, when he spent that money, he gave it to you on the wedding day, that was him saying, I'm committed to you as my wife. Even though I have not met you yet, this is my symbol of commitment. And her not wearing it and her not bringing it to their apartment that they share was supposed to be a sign of rejecting him as a person, which is how he's felt this entire time. But Haley never picked up on that part. So she's like, he just keeps whining about this bracelet, and it's like, fine, I will give you back your bracelet. Like, I just don't understand. Like, she wasn't taking any accountability at all for how he felt. And I've been saying from the beginning, neither one of them needs to be married, honestly. They both just have some stuff that they need to work through that they have not yet worked through. So they don't even need to be married. But that's pretty much all that happened with them. I'm going to say Virginia and Eric for last because it's a lot. But Brianna and Vincent, they seem to still be getting along. They went horseback riding as their couple's activity, and he was not feeling it. She picked the adventure. She keeps saying, I want a man to do adventurous stuff, but I've always wanted a spouse to, to just be adventurous with and have all these wonderful experiences with. He's not against having experiences, he's not against adventure, but he was like, I just need us to talk about it first because he doesn't like big animals. And so when it came to the horseback riding thing, he's like, in my mind, I'm going to get on the horse, but I can't say what I'm going to do once I see the actual horse. So he was freaked out. He was very nervous. He ended up getting on the horse and, did what he was supposed to do, did his due diligence, but he basically told her, like, look, just from now on, just talk to me about stuff. If you want to, quote unquote, surprise me, talk to me about the surprise beforehand so I can decide that's something I'm willing to do. Like, I can tell you right now, I'm not swimming with no sharks. Kind of missed me with the bungee jumping and skydiving. I don't think I'm going to do that. And so she started kind of looking disappointed, like, well, I wanted a husband to do this stuff with. And it's like, in her mind, I need to get him out of his shell. And so on one hand, that's not a bad thing. I feel like in every couple, you're supposed to pour into your relationship the things that you have, your resources, your strengths, or whatever. As a spouse, it is kind of my job to help strengthen your weaknesses and to kind of be those strengths that are your weaknesses. That's fine. So if he is normally closed off and scared about stuff and she's normally like, yeah, let's do it, I think it's okay that she wants to kind of bring him out of his shell a little bit, but she has to be willing to allow him to bring out things in her that she has not done before or things that she has previously been nervous about. And I think Brianna, as nice as she is, as much as she does love Vincent, I think she still does have that controlling nature in her. And I feel like something simple, like, not simple, but something like their finances. He is saying, okay, this is how I view finances. We need to save. At some point, we're going to have kids. At some point, we're going to have a house. At some point, we're going to do these things. We need to get in the mindset of saving money. Not saying we don't spend any at all, but maybe not spend as much. And she's like, well, I work hard for the money, so I think I deserve the right to spend it. So I'm used to spending like $400 a month on clothes. And I was like, well, how many places are you going that you need to buy that many clothes every single month? Like, why? And also because I personally wouldn't do that. But the thing is, on one hand, she does have a point that you make this money, you deserve to spend your money. However, now that you are a wife, a lot of areas in your life, you just have to tweak your thinking a little bit to include another person. It's not saying that she's wrong and not saying that he's right, but his way of doing things was fine when he was by himself. Same thing for her. But now if you guys are one, you are together, you are a married couple, now you guys have to decide collectively what works best for you and what works best for the goals for your own individual marriage. So both of them need to kind of give and take a little bit in that area, and hopefully that happens. But they're the couple that has been, quote unquote, the couple to root for this season because they seem to really understand what's going on. They're really trying. And I still like them as a couple. One thing that may be kind of an issue is that he automatically assumes that once the experiment is over that they're moving into his house. And it's something they haven't talked about before. She did say something where she's like, I don't know, just the idea of living with him is like, it's intimidating. It's like, girl, you've been living with him these past 2 months. But it's one thing to be living together with cameras, another thing when the cameras are gone and now it's real life. And it's like, oh, we're living together. But again, I think that's something that they can talk about, and hopefully, again, it'll be a compromise. It won't be her saying, well, I don't want to live with you. We should all live in my house. Hopefully it'll be like, okay, well, let's figure out what works best when it comes to where our jobs are located, where the different amenities that I need. Like hopefully they'll have that particular discussion, and I think they will. I think when it comes to really big things, I think they are good at discussing things and figuring out what works best for everybody. Now, Virginia and Eric, I said from the very beginning that I don't think they're going to make it, and it was mainly because it's really interesting. So all of these reality shows, they paint these characters or personalities in a certain way to make us view them a certain way, to make us automatically have these preconceived notions about them. Virginia from the very beginning was painted as this flighty, alcoholic, like college girl esque person. So that's how we've all viewed her, and like, oh my gosh, she drinks so much, and but that's what they focused on. So now that that's not the focus anymore, we get to see more of her personality. Virginia's not a bad person. Eric is still controlling and all this stuff, and still talks down to her, but I feel like, and it's interesting because he also says he doesn't like the word ultimatum, even though he's been doing that every single episode since the very beginning, except he didn't do it last night, and I don't think he did it last week. And he kept saying, like, you give ultimatums, you're not willing to meet in the middle. And it was rich coming from him because it's like, dude, you're always telling her if you don't do this, we're done, I'm out. He says that all the time. So we've always painted him as the person who doesn't know how to compromise. But last night was my first time really seeing Virginia not compromising. It was like, oh, okay. So now I see his point. It's not all Eric, it is Virginia as well. And she admitted we're both very stubborn people and we both want things done a certain way. And it's okay to be stubborn when it comes to some things, but again, in a marriage, you have to compromise. So Haley and Jacob are the ones who had the awkward conversation the first night of that weekend retreat. And then Eric and Virginia had the awkward conversation the second night because they all were talking about where they're going to live and, what are your plans after decision day. So Virginia, I guess her lease is up in 4 months. In her mind, for those 4 months, I'm going to stay at my house, my apartment. And in that time, Eric needs to rent out his place. And then in that 4 months, we'll find a place together. That is her solution. But his thing is still, I own. So why would I give up what I own to spend money again on something else? Now, I had this discussion with my husband last night because we were in kind of a similar situation. When he and I got married, he was already in an apartment and he had been there for maybe 1 or 2 years, I think, before we officially moved in. We meaning my son and I. And, it's not like my husband had like, oh, decorations and this is mine and this is whatever. He's very much like, whatever you want to do, I don't care. He didn't do no decorations. He's very minimalist. He don't care about none of this stuff. All he cared about is, do I have my TVs? Is my cable hooked up? Do I have my couch? Bed. That's all he really cared about. So when I came in, I did bring a few things. I not brought things with me, but I did, buy a few things for the house because I knew it was stuff that we needed, but it never completely felt like our home. There were moments where I felt like, oh, I'm in my husband's house. And so I understand where Virginia's coming from in terms of if I go there, I feel like I'm going to be walking on eggshells, especially with all of my pets. I think she has like a dog and 2 cats, and maybe 2 dogs and 2 cats, something like that. And, she's like, that would just be too much because I know how he likes to keep his house, and that would just be chaotic for him. And I would feel like I'm infringing on his territory and making his personal space uncomfortable. So I don't want to do that. So when she first said this a few weeks back, I was like, you know what? I completely get it because I was kind of the same way, except I didn't come with pets. But I understand. I understood that. But then they were talking about her cats. Now, he's allergic to cats, and I don't have allergies, but I know that there are layers to allergies, right? So being allergic to cats could mean that you can't be around them at all, and your throat closes up, and you can't breathe, and it could be a potentially very dangerous thing. Not potentially, it can be a dangerous thing, and you can land in hospital or something worse. So I don't think his allergies are at that point, but they do make him uncomfortable, whether it's just a scratchy throat, watery eyes, or eyes swelling up or whatever. He still has some kind of physical reaction to cats. So she has 2 of them. So Jacob's suggestion was, well, why don't you have a room for the cats? If he has, and Eric was like, yeah, I have a guest room. So Jacob's like, yeah, why don't you just have that be the cat's area, so that way, Jacob, so that way Eric can still live in the house. And basically the couples were trying to help them out. Like, okay, well, what about a compromise? Because Clara asked Eric, if Virginia is giving up her apartment and she's moving into what is essentially your space, what are you willing to do to make it more comfortable for her? And he's like, I literally told her, whatever you need me to do, I'll do it. Like, I've literally told her this every single time. So Jacob was like, well, why don't the cats have a room to themselves, so that way Eric doesn't have that issue. And Virginia was like, I'm not locking my cats up in a room. And they had this discussion again in bed, Eric and Virginia. And I definitely fell for Eric in this particular moment for a couple reasons. One, it is frustrating when you're saying the same thing over and over and over again, and the person you're talking to is either making excuses or completely ignoring the things that you're saying. And two, I, for one, don't have any allergies, like I said. I am extremely afraid of cats. That is my biggest fear. I don't do cats. So I had no sympathy for Virginia at all in the situation, because I'm like, I ain't even got no cats. I don't like cats. Completely afraid of them. I don't care what happens to your cats. So no sympathy with that. But outside of that, they're laying in bed and he's telling her, well, she's like, yeah, so we move together, that'll be fun. My cats, oh my gosh, you see my cats, they just love sleeping next to me. Like, one of them actually sleeps in the crevice right here, because they just been doing that for 5 years. That's just what they love. They love sleeping like with me in bed. And he's like, okay, but when we move, they can't sleep in the bed with you anymore because I have an allergy. And she's like, well, no, I mean, I think, she's like, you'll see, it'll be okay. Like, it'll just be fine. And he's like, no, well, you don't understand. Like, I have an allergy. They can't be in the bed with us. Like, why can't you close the door? She's like, I can't lock out my cats. She's like, why can't you? He was like, you can just, like, close the door and they don't have to. She's like, no, you don't understand. Like, how do you train cats not to sleep in the bed with you anymore? Like, I can't do that to them. And he's like, yo, Virginia, like, I have an allergy. And she's like, I mean, you'll be fine. You can just take, like, Benadryl every night. Like, what? And obviously what he said in his talking head is true. She's basically putting her cats, and also not even just putting her cats. His biggest thing with her is that we are married. I want to be the number one person in your life. As your spouse, I should come before your family, your friends, and your pets. Now, I agree with that wholeheartedly. However, I also understand from Virginia's standpoint that that is a lot harder to put into practice. Me, not having been on this show, I dated my husband for 10 years before we were married, and even after being with him for 10 years prior, it was still hard for me to put him first in certain situations, to call him first when some good news happened, to confer with him first before I made certain decisions. And I'm sure it was hard for him as well. It's still an adjustment period, no matter how long you've been dating the person. So to expect her to immediately do that when I've known you and been married to you for all of 2 months, that is a lot to ask. I get that. However, there's still supposed to be a desire to at least try, to at least understand that it has to happen and at least try to do that. And I don't think she's even at that stage where she's willing to try. In her mind, well, I've known my friends longer and these are my pets. It's like, okay, I get that, but you're married now. I'm your husband. So I've never said get rid of your pets. I never said get rid of your friends. I never said stop talking to your family. You're very close with all of them, and that's fine. I love that about you. However, I just want to make sure that I'm up here. Like, I think it's fair of me to ask to be put first. And with her being so adamant that these cats sleep in the bed with them, he's like, you're basically putting the cats before me and before my safety. He was like, do you honestly think if the tables were turned and my dog, who I love so much, if he wanted to sleep in the bed with me but you had an allergy, do you really think I'm going to kick you out of the bed? And she was like, I mean, for text, I think you would. He was like, no. He's like, you're my wife. I will put you first. Like, why would I put my dog over you and put my dog over your, not even just happiness, but your comfort and your health? Like, I wouldn't do that to you. And so I understood him being frustrated, because her immaturity was really, really shining through. So I definitely got it and I understood it. And I do feel like there are just so many things that they do not agree on. And because they're both stubborn, a lot of times with some of these big issues, they're not willing to meet in the middle at all. So it's really fascinating and interesting to watch them, because it's like, okay, you guys do actually care for each other. You do actually love each other. I can clearly see that, because you both are really trying to make this work. And even though I've said all this time that they're not going to make it, I kind of want them to now. but it's going to take a lot of give and take on both of their parts, and I don't know if either one of them is in a place to really do that. So I don't know. That's my opinion. I think we have maybe 2 more episodes, maybe, I think. So my final, not final, because every week I, update my predictions. Eric and Virginia are both going to say yes. I don't know if that's the best idea, but I think they're both going to say yes. Claire and Ryan for sure are going to say yes. They are going to say yes. So will Brianna and Vincent. Haley and Jacob will say no. Now, saying yes on decision day does not mean when they go back and check on the couples at the 6 month mark that they'll also be together. But I do think on decision day, 3 of the couples will say yes. Haley and Jacob will say no. They're going to bring Paige and Chris back just because, like, why not? And obviously, they're still not together, and that's fine. So yeah, those are my predictions. So let me know if you agree. Let me know if there was something I missed that you wanted me to talk about. And give me some suggestions for other things for me to review in the future. Other shows. It can be reality. It can be an older show. It can be something on Netflix or Amazon. Like, give me some ideas. I love watching TV and I love discovering something new that's really good. So talk to you guys next week. Peace.